All right, welcome back. In this video, we're going to look at the congressional phase of Reconstruction. So this is the second phase. So we've looked at the first phase, which was presidential Reconstruction, and we showed there how it was going to be a very lenient plan towards the South. And so going back a little bit, to backtrack a little bit, we want to go back to Lincoln's administration. In 1864, the Wade-Davis bill is passed, or is voted on in Congress. It's going to be vetoed by Lincoln. But basically, radical Republicans passed a bill that would put Congress in control of Reconstruction. Former Confederates could not vote. Majority of Southern whites must sign the loyalty oath. Majority, not 10%, but a majority of them. And then Lincoln is going to veto pocket this, which basically means that he just kept it on his desk until it expired. So this is basically to show that early on it was clear that tensions between Congress and the executive were at play, no matter if Lincoln had lived or not. But yes, he's not going to live, and he's going to be assassinated, and this is going to give Republicans in Congress, radical Republicans in Congress, an opportunity to take over the process of Reconstruction as they wanted to when Lincoln was alive, because Andrew Johnson is going to be an incredibly weak and ineffective president. So in 1865, a joint committee of 15 is formed in Congress, and basically what they're going to do is deliberate and come up with a few conclusions here. So one of them is the South had to guarantee former slaves the right to vote and hold office. Now, this is something that Lincoln really didn't take a stand on, and his stance on suffrage was basically educated former slaves could vote, but very limited. But the South is going to say no. The majority of male former slaves should be guaranteed the right to vote. Ex-Confederate officers were forbidden to hold office. Repeal of the Black Codes. So again, this is all in opposition to Andrew Johnson, the current president. Congress had to be given power over Reconstruction. Right? And then what else they're going to do within this is they are going to, basically the Black Codes are going to be enforced in local governments. Andrew Johnson isn't going to do anything about it. And so Congress is going to really push back. So one of the first things they do is they pass the Civil Rights Act of 1866, guaranteeing people civil liberties. Now, the Civil Rights Act, it's not going to be enforced that well because Johnson is the president and he really doesn't believe that former slaves should have civil rights. He believes they should be free, but as far as civil rights are concerned, he's not a big believer in that. So in 1868, the 14th Amendment is ratified and basically gives teeth to the Civil Rights Act. And this basically says that a natural-born citizen cannot be, their rights as a citizen cannot be denied based on race or former condition of servitude. Now, the Reconstruction Acts of 1867 are going to get passed, and this is when Reconstruction gets very controversial. Because the Black Codes are not being suppressed by the Johnson administration, basically this is where Congress really takes over the process of Reconstruction. The first Reconstruction Act of 1867 created basically military districts within the South. Basically, the South is going to be under martial law, especially when we get to the Command Army Act of 1867. Another thing that's going to be passed is the Tenure Office Act. It basically says that in order for the current president, who would be Johnson at the time, to fire any of his cabinet members, he would have to get the approval of Congress. Now, Johnson wasn't a very bright individual on many accounts, and he's going to fall right into their trap. He's going to end up firing the Postmaster General, and this is where impeachment proceedings are going to get in effect. So Johnson is going to be impeached, and so again, that word's coming up quite a bit in modern-day politics, and probably will continue depending on how this election goes in November. But An impeachment just means an indictment. So he was indicted on a number of high crimes in the House. Now what happens is that the evidence is brought over to the Senate, and the Senate deliberates over that evidence, over the indictment. And the Senate ultimately is going to choose not to convict or to remove Johnson from the presidency. So he's impeached, but he stays in office. But effectively, he's an ineffective president the entire time. He's going to veto a bunch of stuff that Congress passes, but the Republicans have such a strong majority in Congress at this time that they are going to be able to override his vetoes with a 2/3 vote. The 15th Amendment is also ratified in 1870, and this basically gets a little bit more explicit about civil rights. One says that you cannot deny someone's right to vote, the 15th Amendment, and that one's in 1870. So those, just keep that in mind too. You have 3 amendments during Reconstruction. You have the 13th Amendment in 1865, which abolishes slavery. You have the 14th Amendment ratified in 1868, which guarantees people civil liberties, and the 15th Amendment gets very specific, saying you can't deny someone's right to vote based on race or position of former servitude. All right, and then, oops, what's going on here? That's about, let's just leave it at that. So those are the main points. Do go through the reading to come up with more specifics on congressional reconstruction, but basically just understand, if you understand this right here, and this was just passed in defiance of Johnson's, or as a result of Johnson's weakness as president. It would be very interesting if Lincoln had stayed president. Who knows what would have happened, but it would have been very difficult for radical Republicans to pass these bills because Lincoln was such a popular president after the Civil War. Prior to the Civil War, when it was being fought, he wasn't so popular. But the fact that he won that war gave Lincoln quite a bit of clout, political capital as it's called, with the American people. Who knows if he would have expended that, but anyway. We can leave it at that, and do keep in mind that these things right here do provide the basis for the promise of Reconstruction. So that's the last part of the essay prompt. This is what is going to empower African Americans in the South, African American men in the South, and where they will hold office, open up businesses, and really create a viable middle class for a while during Reconstruction and after Reconstruction. But what we are going to contend with is the backlash once Democrats during this time take over the South and really push back against these things right here that were passed by radical Republicans. Okay, talk with you guys later. Take care. Bye.